Good morning, guys. I'm here today to introduce my colleague. You may not know this, but one of DEVENEY's newest hires is fluent in one of the most complicated foreign languages on earth, bureaucracy. So Anna's resume reads like a confusing bowl of alphabet soup, running the gamut of government agencies that touch everything from healthcare to housing to hydraulic fracturing. She's also functioned as a She served as the Director of Communications for Louisiana's Office of Lieutenant Governor, for the Department of Natural Resources, and the Louisiana Housing Corporation. She's also functioned in legislative liaison roles for a member of Congress for the Department of Hospitals and for the Division of Administration. She's written congressional testimony. She's managed national media relations in the aftermath of Hurricane Isaac, and she's also ran the state's website for transparency and accountability. So today, Anna's going to talk about why governmental relations is an important part of the PR toolbox and how you can work with government agencies and officials to positively promote your clients. Please welcome.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good morning. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit. My name is Anna Nierman, and this is President Dwight D. Eisenhower. President Eisenhower once said that politics should be the part-time profession of every citizen. And as a native of Winfield, Louisiana, which is the city of 3 governors and the home of the Louisiana Political Hall of Fame Museum, I couldn't agree more. Sure, we as citizens try to remember the vote. We hum a few bars of the national anthem at sporting events, and we do our best to stay on top of current events. But I think that the same goes for a lot of public relations professionals. There's a lot that we could do to expand what we offer our clients by adding governmental relations to our PR toolbox. So before I dive too deeply into governmental relations, I want to take you back to 1994. I was in 4th grade and was assigned the responsibility of putting together a social studies project for my social studies class. And at the time, I was really into dreams. So naturally, I wanted to do my social studies project on dreams. So I wanted to talk about everything. I wanted to talk about nightmares, and I wanted to talk about sleepwalking, and I wanted to talk about dream interpretation, and just everything. So I sponge painted my project board with little clouds, and I glued cotton balls to cut out letters. And I was super excited, but when it came time for me, and let's be honest, my mom, to work on my report, we had a lot of trouble narrowing down what exactly my project would be about. And I lacked focus. And unfortunately, my teacher saw that. And she frankly told me that I wasn't quite ready for social studies fair and try again next year. And so that was when I learned a big lesson about focus. Now, my mom would be upset if I didn't tell you that the following year, I learned about an island called Lobby and found my laser focus in one first place. So that's the moral of the story, that it's important to find focus when doing presentations. That's enough of that. So today I'm going to find the focus and talk about governmental relations in 3 different ways. I'll go over a few basics on governmental relations. Just like with my Dreams project, there's a lot that I can talk about when it comes to governmental relations. I mean, there's a local level with school boards, city councils, mayors. There's, take it a bit further, you've got state government, and then there are 50 states. So I can't give you a presentation on governmental relations in all 50 states. And then you've got federal level, and then you've got state agencies, and we could really go on all day. And I know that I don't have time for that. Frankly, you guys don't want to hear all of it right now. So we're going to focus on state government in Louisiana, specifically the legislative and executive branches. I'll talk to you a little bit about how to identify partners that could benefit your clients and future clients. And we'll talk about how we can start building and cultivating relationships with people in government. So to start out, governmental relations is the branch of public relations that helps an organization communicate with government publics. So why do we do government relations? Well, in a nutshell, because the actions of government at the state, local, and federal level have a major impact on how a business or organization operates. So in a nutshell, government makes rules, and people and organizations want to be involved in what those rules are. How do we do government relations? You know, a lot of people are really intimidated by the idea of going to the big government with issues or concerns, but it's actually something that you or I or any citizen can be part of. There are a lot of different ways to engage in government relations. Everything from office visits to coordinating grass stops and grassroots issue advocacy. Capital days are a really fun way to promote a client or an organization. Letters to the editor even can be considered an aspect of government relations. Lobbying is what most people think of first, and press conferences, getting elected officials involved in press conferences. And I just want to highlight lobbying for a moment and let you know that we'll talk a little bit more about lobbying further in the presentation because it's definitely a cornerstone of government relations, but it's definitely not the only part, the only activity involved in government relations. Okay, so who are we talking to? The lobbying activities can take place with the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. The judicial branch, what? Typically, traditional lobbying activities don't occur with the judicial branch. But one way that organizations or individuals can lobby the judicial branch is by filing what's called an amicus brief or a friend of the court brief. You'll see this a lot of times when there's a very high-profile issue, a governor or a member of Congress will file an amicus brief to show their support for a specific side of the issue. So we'll talk a little bit about lobbying. Lobbying the legislative branch is fairly obvious. It's talking to members of the legislature in order to influence their decisions on a piece of legislation. Executive branch lobbying covers elected officials, everyone from the governor to the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and state agencies and boards and commissions. So there's a wide range of people who can be lobbied on the executive side.
Okay. Thank you.
Specifically for the legislative branch, according to the Louisiana Board of Ethics website, which has a summary of all the legislation pertaining to lobbying in Louisiana, legislative branch lobbying is defined as direct contact with the legislator, the preparation of materials, and conducting or attending a meeting with the purpose of influencing the passage or failure of legislation. This is actually a pretty narrow focus when you think of all of the other ways or all of the other things that you could talk with the legislator about. This doesn't rule out reaching out to a legislator to invite them to one of your client events. It doesn't rule out sending or passing on a news article to a legislator, informing them of activities happening in the district. And the key thing to remember with executive branch lobbying is that executive branch lobbying is any direct contact or communication with an executive branch official, and this is not limited to elected officials. This also trickles down to department secretaries or deputy secretaries or any employee of the executive branch. So the Louisiana Board of Ethics website is a really great resource for everything from understanding what the lobbying laws are in Louisiana to finding a list of the lobbyists who have fines due. I'm not going to name you, recognize a few of them when I check them. So if you're watching, you may want to check and see if you go fine. But where lobbyists log in to register as lobbyists, to file their disclosure forms, and make sure that they're lobbying according to Louisiana law. So let's talk a little bit more about the structure of government in Louisiana. Our legislative branch includes 39 senators and 105 representatives, representing districts all across Louisiana. And each year, they converge at a legislative session, which usually begins in April or March and ends in June, depending on the year and the type of session. Legislative session is an incredibly busy and personally, I think, exciting time because it's a time when all of the decision makers for our state are located in one place. And corporations and nonprofit organizations and trade associations and interest groups, concerned citizens, high school classes on field trips, all converge on the state capitol as decisions are made, as laws are passed, and as our state changes a little bit every year. Days are filled with committee meetings and long hours in session. Nights are filled with receptions and dinners and strategy sessions, and it's just a really exciting time, and that's when a lot of the lobbying takes place. The executive branch is made up of all of the elected officials, all of the statewide elected officials, governor, obviously, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and the rest, and then the agencies that they govern. It also includes 20 state agencies. Everything from the Division of Administration to the Department of Agriculture and Forestry. The great thing is that basically any client or any organization can find one of these agencies that administers a program for them or covers them in some way. So that's one way to identify who you may want to partner with. And then once you identify your agency, you can really zero in on who the best individuals within the organizations are to build a relationship with. At the top, you've got your agency secretary. There are typically deputy secretaries within each agency. A chief of staff is a position that's common in a lot of agencies. And I think one area that is really beneficial for us as PR professionals to build relationships is within the public information office. Public information office is sort of like a PR office or the communications office. And the public information director is kind of like the head of PR for the agency. So reaching out to those individuals who are over communications, introducing yourself and letting them know that you can provide information on this subject or this subject can lead to a good, mutually beneficial relationship between you and that individual and then the agency as well. Another position I'd like to talk about is the confidential assistant position. This is a title that's not very common outside of government. This is typically the right-hand man or woman of the agency secretary, and this individual is charged with everything from writing briefs to managing the schedule to attending events with the agency head. And introducing yourself to that individual is a really good way to begin your relationship with an agency. So when it comes to building relationships, I think that there are 3 simple steps. First, you identify who you want to target, who you want to build a relationship, who's going to be beneficial for your client to know on a personal level. Next is research, and then finally you begin to cultivate the relationship. When identifying a potential partner, there are a few different ways that you can do this. The state legislature website has a great tool that helps you identify legislators based on their district. So you can choose a geographical connection. Let's say that you have a client in Lafayette and you want to build a relationship with the state senator and the state representative who covers their area in Lafayette. You can enter the address or the zip code on the state legislature's website and determine exactly which officials cover that area. That way, whenever you're putting together an invitation list for a press conference or a grand opening or another event that your client is having, you can invite that member of the legislature to be at the event. And a lot of times, that's a really good way to begin getting support of that individual. And it can also lead to some support and some positive press. Another way to identify is by checking out the committee list. You may have a client who, let's say that they're a nursing home, for instance. Then you would identify the committee that serves legislation concerning nursing homes, which would be Senate Health and Welfare or House Health and Welfare, and you could begin building a relationship with that committee or that committee chair. You could also look at filed legislation from previous sessions and determine which members of the legislature have filed pieces of legislation on which topics. That can help you identify who has interests in specific areas that can help you or your client. And then finally, subject matter is really applicable when it comes to navigating the agencies. Obviously, if you're working for an oil and gas company, the first relationship that you want to build may not be with Veterans Affairs. You're going to want to zero in on the Department of Environmental Protection or the Department of Natural Resources. So this is today's version of the Louisiana State Legislature's website, and it has great links that can take you to learn more about the House, the Senate. You can see the daily committee schedule, and this is where you can determine who your legislators are based on district and address. And then before you move on to cultivating the relationship, you really want to confirm that it's a relationship that will be positive for your client. A good way to do that is, if you're focusing on a legislator or a set of legislators, is to check out their campaign website. See what they have listed as policy positions in the past to make sure that it aligns with what the goals of your client are. You can also check out the agency website just to confirm that they are in fact the right agency for you to be working with. I recommend checking out the social media for both legislators, elected officials, and agencies in order to, again, just confirm that priorities align. And then checking out news articles, because you hate to get into a situation where you've invited a member of the legislature to be a part of an event only to find out once they arrive that they actually oppose what your organization is doing. So it's really important to do the proper research and legwork before moving forward. And then finally, when you begin cultivating a relationship, there are a lot of things that you can do that actually that are not considered lobbying, that would keep you from having to register as a lobbyist, but still allow you to engage with members of the government with your client. You can start by setting up an email or a phone call, sending an email or setting up a phone call, working with their legislative assistant or their district staff, setting up an office meeting, inviting them to one of your client's events, giving them an opportunity, and see the work that the organization that you're representing does. Another thing is that you could invite them to speak at an event that either your company is having or that your organization is having. Maybe they're hosting a conference and this legislator happens to be an expert on something that is of interest to the group hosting the conference. After you've begun developing a relationship with them and you know that they are in support of what your organization is doing, you can reach out to them to be quoted in a press release that you're sending out. If it's a well-respected member of the legislature or a well-respected secretary, it could lend a lot of credibility and support to what you're promoting. You could also add them to the distribution list for some of your press releases or send specific press releases based on topic to the legislators. If you identify that, whether by news articles or otherwise, that a specific individual is working on a certain cause and your client or the organization you represent has information that could benefit both groups, you could share that information with them. This is what our group is doing. This information could assist you in accomplishing your goals. You could also offer to testify or arrange testimony during a committee meeting. And finally, you could plan and execute one of my favorite things, which is a Capitol Day, which is just a great day and a full day's opportunity to promote your client or their trade association. And it's just a really great way to see all of the legislators at once and have an opportunity to meet with members of the executive branch. So basically, governmental relations in a nutshell cannot be put in a nutshell, but I hope that today I've given you a few guidelines for identifying partners, researching those partners, and then cultivating those relationships. Governmental relations is an important part of any PR professional's arsenal, and it's one that we shouldn't forget about. So if you guys have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
So I know your presentation focused on, state level officials, but how would you involve a member of the Congress in your client's governmental affairs?
Okay, thanks. That's a really good question. When it comes to members of Congress, and you're right, I did focus just on the state level. So let's talk about members of Congress in Louisiana. I think that one really effective way of beginning a relationship with a congressman or a senator from Louisiana would be to invite them to one of your events. And because even though they have very busy schedules and they spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C., they have district staff who are considered community liaisons who will attend the event on behalf of the elected official. And then that gives your organization some exposure to the senator or the congressman's office, even if the congressman is not able to attend. It gives them a taste of what your organization is, what they do, and it helps to keep you and your organization on top of mind if you ever contact the congressman's office or the senator's office again for an event.
Cool.
You mentioned Capitol Day being one of your favorite tactics. Can you expand on what that is exactly?
Sure. Capitol Days are definitely a lot of fun. I'll tell you a little bit about a Capitol Day that I planned a few years ago. I was volunteering with Susan G. Comen's Baton Rouge affiliate, and they were looking for a way to expand awareness to the members of the Louisiana legislature, just to let them know we exist, this is what we do, these are the services that we offer, and they weren't necessarily opposing or supporting a specific piece of legislation. So it was a great opportunity for education. We also discovered that there's no overarching, or at the time at least, there's no overarching organization over all of the affiliates in Louisiana. So we contacted the other Susan G. Komen affiliates across Louisiana. We let them know that we were planning to put together a day of advocacy at the Capitol and that we wanted them to attend. So we coordinated all of the other affiliates in the state. We invited them, the staff of the affiliates, volunteers, survivors, family members of survivors to join us at the Capitol. We planned a press conference on the steps of the Capitol, which you can do by contacting the Capitol and reserving the front steps. So we reserved the front steps and we hosted a press conference that included an official from the Department of Health and Hospitals, a state legislator's wife who is also a doctor, and we had a survivor speak and tell her story, and we invited all of the legislators out to the press conference to attend. We had media coverage, and then we actually created little postcards that the volunteers could complete the day of the event. We passed them out, and they were able to fill in their name, their address, and a message to their legislator on breast cancer awareness and finding a cure. And at that point, we then, based on their address, distributed all of those postcards to the appropriate legislator. We also created little bags with education information. We created materials that had all of the addresses for all of the affiliates across the state. We included statistics about breast cancer and service in Louisiana, and we gave to the legislators a running ribbon pin to help them to wear that day. We had, there are a lot of moving parts to it, and so you definitely see that it's a great way to converge on the Capitol in a really big way and make a really big visual impact. I mean, you approach the Capitol as a legislator that day to, go to committee and cast your votes, and you see a crowd of people in pink. And it just really is a good way to build interest and get people asking questions and put yourself in the position to answer those questions. So I think Capitol Days are really fun.
Obviously, people that represent us, representatives, senators, congressmen, they have very busy schedules, especially congressmen that are in Washington. And as PR professionals, on behalf of clients, let's say we're sending out pertinent information on an issue that they really need them to listen to. How do you make yourself stand apart from a sea of letters and emails that are coming in? Does that person actually read that, or is it their assistants? How do you get that information directly to the person?
I think that this is really where building a relationship ahead of time, doing your prep work before you really have a pressing issue, I think that's where that really comes in. Because if you start by making sure that that member of Congress or that member of the legislature knows that you exist, that they know the names of the major players in the organization, that whenever there is an issue, because they're familiar with that group, they're more likely to respond in a way that's beneficial to your group. So it all starts with laying the foundation before an issue arises. Got any more questions?
Say a client would have asked me to meet with legislators or agency officials on their behalf, would I need to register as a lobbyist?
Thank you. That's a really good question. Chances are, yes. Anytime that you're acting on behalf of a client or an organization in a capacity that in which they are asking you to influence the legislator on legislation, more than likely, yes. And the great thing is that the Louisiana Board of Ethics exists to answer those questions and make those rulings. So if you have a specific situation that you're not sure of, you have a great resource to get those answers. And I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So if you have the resource, use it. Okay, thank you so much for coming today and for tuning in. I really appreciate it.